Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Karen Allen. Some of you may have worked with me in the past on value-added products, or if you had questions about the safety of processed foods. And there have been some new developments that we want to give you an update on, provide a little bit of background about what's going on with these programs, both nationwide, regionally, and then also within Utah, and then give you some resources for how you can actually find more information moving ahead into the future once these programs are fully established and up and running. So in 2022, the USDA Agricultural Marketing Service announced that there was a competitive program to establish a minimum of 6 regional food business centers throughout the country. And these were specifically designed to be able to provide support to small and mid-sized farm and food businesses. So they were established to support a more resilient, diverse, and competitive food system and really provide some access to some of those businesses that had traditionally had a harder time accessing assistance or had maybe been overlooked. They will support producers by providing localized assistance within your community as much as possible. They will also provide technical assistance that is needed by small businesses to access new markets and resources. And they will assist small and mid-sized producers, as I mentioned, in overcoming barriers to market access. So they're going to do this in 3 ways. They'll specifically focus on coordination between different centers, technical assistance, and then the capacity building, which we'll talk a little bit more about as well. So in May of 2023, the USDA announced the 12 final regional centers. There's one, the National Intertribal Food Business Center, that is a nationwide center. The other 11 represent specific regions, as you can see from this map. Utah will be part of the Southwest Regional Center that is based at the University of California. And one of the things that they really want to promote is that resources created through one center can be shared across all centers so that we can really maximize that effort and share good practices and how to best help our farm and food businesses. So the Southwest Regional Food Business Center is California, Nevada, Arizona, and Utah. And their 3 main ways that they will focus on helping the small businesses, they will serve as the regional hub for coordination and communication across these 4 states. They will work with all of the federal and state agencies within each state as well. They'll focus on outreach, expansion, and support of partnership and networks, provide support for other initiatives and knowledge sharing of relevant resources within the region, these 4 states, and also across the other regional food business centers. The technical assistance piece will be provided directly to those small and mid-sized farm and food businesses. This includes producers, processors, distributors, and then any other related food businesses that are within that supply chain. The Food Business Center will serve as a hub for technical assistance that will support various food and farm business needs, as well as connect producers to other entities within that supply chain. The last piece is the capacity building, and this is probably the part that everyone, when this program was first announced, was the most excited about. We're still waiting to find out logistically how this is going to work within our region, but I want to give you at least a little bit of background on that. Through the Southwest Regional Food Business Center, there will be financial assistance in the form of business builder subawards of up to $100,000 to support projects focused on regional needs, and also to target businesses that are working towards expansion, other kinds of investment. There really are not as many limits on these subawards as there are in some of the other assistance programs that we see. This funding can be used to support staff, hire new employees. It can be used for business planning activities, for example, a feasibility study or developing a business plan. Software implementation, for example, if you are concerned about traceability, if you're creating a food product and you're required to meet that new traceability standard that the FDA has been put in place, this could be used to support software or other systems that can help with that. Also, the purchase of special equipment, whether that be to promote food safety, to increase processing capacity, or to expand a packaging line. And then also value chain coordination. So Utah is part of this Southwest Regional Center. There are two key partners that are working with this group at UC Davis. That is Utah State University Extension. The three main faculty members involved there are myself, Karen Allen, Kinda Curtis, and Ruby Ward. We will also be hiring 4 additional positions to provide increased access to assistance for our Utah farm and food businesses. There will be a project coordinator that will be responsible for coordinating between USU and also the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food, and then also coordinating up with the Southwest Regional Center. And we will be hiring 3 technical assistants that will be housed throughout the state. And I'll provide a little more information on that in the next slide. The Utah Department of Agriculture and Food, their team consists of Carolyn Hargraves, Allison Ross, and Adriana Franco. Now, all 6 of us have signed up to be on work groups through the Southwestern Center to focus more on some of those issues like the capacity building, the technical assistance, the capacity building, communication and coordination. And we are still in the process of working through how all of that is going to work within our region. There needs to be some consistency between the states. We don't want different states going off in completely different directions, but there also needs to be enough flexibility that allows us within each state to really be responsive to those needs that we see in our local areas, and be able to provide resources and assistance specifically focused on those needs. So as part of this, the Utah Department of Ag and Food will also be hiring a new position that is a regulatory navigation specialist that can help, especially with some of those really tricky situations where it may not be immediately clear which set of regulations a business needs to follow, depending on their size, who they're going to be selling to, and how that business is structured. So this will be a huge help for Utah, for some of these smaller entrepreneurs who have some of these questions, and we've struggled in the past to find a clear answer. So let's loop back around on the technical assistance. This is roughly where we expect their regions, how we expect those to be divided. This is potentially going to change as we move forward with actually hiring new staff, but we will have someone representing the northern, the southwestern, and the eastern regions of Utah. Where exactly each of these technical assistants will be physically housed is still open for negotiation. We want to make sure that we're able to be flexible and provide the best assistance possible by hiring the best candidates in each of these 3 general areas. So for example, if we identify someone in Price who would make a great technical assistant and is really going to be able to fulfill that mission, then for the Eastern Utah region, that person would be housed in Price. We'll do our best to make sure we can accommodate that either at an extension office, potentially a small business development center, or some other university space that we can use. If we find the best person in Moab, then we will do our best to make sure that that person is housed in Moab. The technical assistants will be traveling through their region, and we will be providing more information once we have these positions filled in terms of a schedule so that people in different counties within that region aren't going to be expected to travel to the office where that person is primarily located, but rather they will be coming out into the community. So you would know there would be certain days or a week when that person would be in your area more locally. These technical assistants will serve as the direct contacts, those first initial contacts for our farm and food businesses that have questions about expansion, business plans, access to markets, moving into value-added processing, or any of those kinds of questions. They can provide a lot of those answers, even some of the basic food safety answers, or help, for example, getting you started on a business plan. And then they can also refer you to other resources if it is something that requires additional expertise or additional time. For example, one of the technical assistants may be able to help you start on a business plan, but then will refer you to a small business development center or other business assistance groups to finalize that and really flesh it out. So where we are now, in the Southwestern Regional Center, as I mentioned, they have set up work groups to address the communication and collaboration efforts, make sure we are communicating and collaborating within our region, these 4 states, as well as outside. There's another work group specifically for those Business Builder Awards. And part of what they are looking at is what that application process will look like. Up to $100,000 can be awarded. That is over the life of this program. So this program, this funding runs through 2028. It might be that some businesses get $100,000, but it's divided over 3 or 4 different application rounds, and the total is $100,000. There may be other businesses that there is a need for a much larger award up front to get them started with expansion, for example, to purchase equipment, hire in new staff. And so there may be one single business builder award of $100,000 over the course of that program. The amount of funding that is available through each of these regional centers is not as much as we would like to see, but it is still a very valuable source of funding that we are hoping we can help our farm and food businesses tap into, in addition to some of those other programs that already exist, whether they're through the state, whether they're through a federal program like the USDA. I know that there was some discussion of the different funding opportunities that exist at both the state and federal level in the first part of this conference today. It's our hope that we will be able to offer grant writing workshops and assistance, even if you end up not being eligible for or not funded through the Business Builder program. We still would be able to offer valuable assistance to help you create those proposals, maybe have a group workshop where several businesses could get together and provide feedback on proposals. So we do want to make sure that we are supporting those activities in any way that we can, even if the ultimate funding source is not through the Regional Food Business Center program. We will be looking at technical assistance needs and then also the evaluation strategy. How do we collect the information that we need from all of our farm and food businesses to report back up to the USDA so that this program has a higher chance of being funded in the future with additional rounds of funding? Currently, only one of those work groups, to my knowledge, has met. I know I am on the technical assistance and the communication work groups. Neither of those have met yet. I know the Business Builder Awards has met. I'm not sure about the evaluation group.
We're meeting March 4th.
Okay, so these things should all be happening within the next month, that we see all of these meeting to start those initial discussions. The Leadership Council, who are the main contact people from each of those key partner organizations, we will be meeting in May to really discuss as a leadership group how we want to move forward, how we want to keep things consistent between the states, what issues we see that are specific to our states, how we can all work together to make sure that everyone is benefiting as much as possible from the assistance that's provided. So we'll have more information, more updates through the summer into the fall. Let's talk now about where we are in Utah. USU and UDAF are moving forward with looking at those new hires. I am hoping that we can have everyone in place by the end of May. I know Caroline told me that UDAF is planning to have the regulatory navigation specialist position listed in March. I am hoping that we will have our technical assistance and program coordinator positions listed in March as well. With that technical assistance, we may end up in a situation where we only have 1 or 2 people in the state providing that assistance, and they need to do a little bit of double duty, pick up a little bit of extra area within the state until we can be fully staffed through this center. For now, though, there are other resources available. The FRAME guidebooks, those are the fundamental resources for agricultural micro-entrepreneurs. There are guidebooks and workbooks that will take you through starting a home-based food processing business. If you are currently farming and growing crops and you want to just sell on a small scale, this can get you set up through the Cottage Food Program or the Home Produced and Home Consumption Act. There is also a food business online course that's under development that once that gets finalized and posted on the USU Extension online course website, that will be available and it will give you much more information on some of those finance issues, business plans, an overview of regulations, some of those other considerations that you need to take into account before you start up an actual processed food business part of your operations. We are also currently conducting a needs assessment for Utah farm and food businesses. Now, I mentioned that at the regional level, we do need to coordinate and make sure that there's some consistency between what the individual state programs are doing. But this needs assessment will really drive our focus in Utah, so we can better identify where those places are that there is the most need and the ones that we can most readily and most easily and most thoroughly address first before we move on to some of the other areas where maybe there's additional curriculum that needs to be created or it's just going to take us longer to get to that. You should all have received an email with the link to these needs assessments this morning. With this, there are 2 different
Karen, I just wanted to stop you. We also just put the needs assessment links in the chat so people can grab them right there.
Perfect. Okay. So there are 2 different surveys. There is one that is a farmer, grower, rancher survey. That actually closes March 1st, so next Friday. If you complete that survey, if you haven't already, if you have, thank you. If you haven't already, if you complete that survey, you can then enter to win one of 2 $500 gift cards. The other survey is specific to our food processors. So if you are not actively growing your own crops that then you are selling directly or processing, you would take the food processor survey. So the farmer grower survey is for those businesses that are in the primary business of growing crops, even if you end up processing some of those into value-added products, you would still take the farmer grower survey. The food processor survey is for those businesses that are not involved in growing their own crops, but are using purchased ingredients, for example, to create that processed food. This survey is going to be open until April 1st, and you can be entered to win one $500 gift card will be awarded for that one. So again, look for those links in the email that were sent out, and also those are available in the chat now. So future updates. We don't have a website we can direct you to right at this moment set up where everything related to the Utah Farm and Food Business Program is housed. But we will be starting a food business listserv. If you are interested in that, please sign up on the Google form. There will be a link posted to that on the conference page next to this presentation. You can also follow regional events that are posted on the Southwestern Region Food Business Center site. That is swfoodbiz.org. That link will also be put in the information, the links and resources next to this presentation. And you can look for national updates on the USDA Regional Food Business Center site. Once we have our own site set up and we are up and running, I'm sure there will be links posted through Extension, through the Diversified Ag website. Also, we will have a link on our Southwest Regional Food Business Center site so you can access Utah-specific programming directly from that site as well. So I do want to take time for questions. Very quickly, I also want to share with you some of the information that you can find on the USDA Regional Food Business Center site and our Southwest Regional site. This site gives you more information on the 12 finalists with links to each of those programs, as well as the link to the National Tribal Center. It gives more information, background on the program, the funding levels that were awarded, the kinds of things they looked for in making those awards. From here, I'm going to link through to the Southwest Regional Center. On this center, you can find out about the partners in Arizona, California, Nevada, and Utah, as well as under their events tab, they have a list of upcoming conferences, workshops, online programs in the Southwest region. You can see there's our Urban and Small Farms Conference listed. There are also a lot of other virtual things in different states within our region that are coming up. So this is a good place to look for any of those workshops or trainings or conferences that you may be interested in attending. And again, where a lot of them are virtual or at least in a hybrid format, this is a great resource so that you can see what's going on in our region. Okay, so questions.
So we had one question come in. Why split this project between UDAF and USU? It seems it would be easier to navigate if there was a single source. It's already difficult to figure out where to locate needed resources.
Yes, that is an excellent question. So the way this project was set up through the USDA, it required that there be partners from multiple disciplines or for example, academia and government, that there be that combination. So within each state in our region, there is an academic partner, a government partner, and then they want to also include a nonprofit partner. In Utah, we are still in the process of determining how we select the right nonprofit partner to include in this. California and Arizona both have already identified a nonprofit partner. Utah and Nevada are still working through that process. The reason is because they wanted to make sure that everyone at our level is communicating with the right people within the state so that we are all aware of everything that is going on. Now, within Utah, the one main point of contact will be the food business program. This website will be housed through USU Extension, and that will be where you start. It doesn't matter if you first contact, for example, the regulatory navigation specialist at UDAF through that website, or a technical assistant through that website. They will be able to direct you to the right person that you need to talk to. And this will be one place where all of those resources for Utah are located. One other thing that I do want to show you on the Southwest Regional site is if you go to the Resources tab, you can select here things specific to Utah. And it gives a list of Utah-specific programs. We will have the link to the Food Business Center, Utah Food Business Center program on this site once we have that up and running. So I know that it's been frustrating in the past. It feels like there's a lot of different places to start. How do you find those resources? This at least will give us one place for Utah, but it will be listed along with some of these other programs so that you can find information, for example, on organic certification specific to Utah.
And I think that we have had a lot more time scheduled for this, but I think that it's good to just have some time to just kind of have a discussion. And so Caroline and any others, feel free to chime in and stuff. But I think part of what you and both UDAF were in kind of envisioning for this is that we have these people that we're going to be hiring, and so they will kind of be our frontline people that should be within your communities or have access in your community somewhere. And that'll give you a one point of contact. And then through that, they can make sure you get to wherever you specifically need to go. And then it may be that you then come back to that person for the next step, and they can kind of guide you not just one time and forward you on to somebody else, but really kind of guide you through the process as you go. And because it may be several different agencies that you need to work with before you're done with satisfying food regulations and safety requirements.
Yeah, and actually we weren't even supposed to start this till 2:30. It was only supposed to go for a half hour, so we started early. But I think this gives us time to answer any additional questions that anybody has.
Attendees who are here this morning, I know it can feel overwhelming seeing the number of grants that are available and then taking that first step with applying for them. So I think one of the biggest things to be excited about this program is once those new staff members are hired at UDAF. Since us at UDAF, we don't have a full-time grant writer on hand or someone who can always be there to help. This will give us several points of contact across the state to do that direct, kind of hand-holding and guiding. So our involvement is primarily that piece with helping people through regulations, but it'll also help Allison, who presented earlier, direct people to those who can give more guidance.
Thank you. And so I think I'm not seeing any more questions.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So we have the two different needs assessment surveys going. One is primarily targeted towards agricultural food producers. So those would be farmers, ranchers, growers. The second one is for food makers and processors. So people not growing their own ingredients, their own crops. I can't go into a lot of detail, but there's a two-pronged rationale for why we're doing this, not only for this new food business center, but through some plans that USU College of Ag and Applied Sciences has, looking into diversifying and really stepping up the resources and things available to food producers within Utah. So that's why we're kind of doing a comprehensive approach. You may have seen our emails multiple times, multiple mentioned, but we do want to get full input from as many of you as we can, so that we can make informed decisions moving forward, and those requesting funding at the state level and at the university level know what it is would be most helpful when they make those asks for funding later on. So that's about all I have to say about that, unless you guys think there's something I missed there.
Yeah, but this is really everybody's opportunity to really, if they want some say into what they would like to see in these programs, the needs assessment and filling out these surveys is really their avenue to provide that, because that's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
And really the point is to really get their input.
Exactly. And then my role within the center, once the center is established, is to help look at marketing projects. So if that's something that you feel like you really want in terms of, if there are products that we don't have good marketing information on, or you feel like consumers have changed their minds recently, consumers change their minds a lot. I will be doing several, I believe 2 to 3 larger market assessments, within the region every year. So something to think about.
One of the other things we're hoping to have once we are able to physically carve out some space, probably somewhere in the Salt Lake City area, is to have some smaller pieces of demo equipment or pilot scale equipment that we can actually use to help with product development. Let our businesses come in and try out a specific piece of equipment to see if it is something that they want to purchase for their own business for expansion, a larger version of that. If we know the kinds of products that people are primarily interested in making, we will be able to get equipment in that is more readily usable by more companies. So the more feedback you can give us, even on things you would like to do in the future or have thought about doing but aren't quite ready, that will help us better equip this lab space where we can actually help with some of those kinds of processes. We do have funding for probably 4 or 5 pieces of smaller bench scale equipment that could be used as demos for some of these food processing activities.
And then there's another couple of questions that came in. So Red Acre Center is an established nonprofit in Utah and has had a major impact on local food and ag policy. I'm hopeful you would consider if they would be a good fit for the NP. I can't remember what NP stands for. They might not be available, but should be considered.
For the nonprofit, yes, Red
Yeah.
Acre Center is definitely on our radar. We're actually having a meeting next week at the regional level with all of the lead partners to discuss how best to identify those nonprofits that may be the best fit. I think some of the concern is if there is too much focus on promoting policy where it needs to be representing more broadly the food system in general. And so we are actually going to develop kind of an application or a checklist that we could go through with some of those nonprofits. And Red Acre Center is a great one. There are a couple of others that we had thought about in terms of involvement in the Utah piece. So.
And then there was also a question, so any chance for funding a commercial kitchen space for teaching demonstration in the Salt Lake area? And so not just individual businesses and stuff. Is there a role for that with this project?
That is outside the scope of this project and the funding that we have. But as Kinda kind of hinted at, there are some larger discussions going on in terms of activities that Extension could be involved in related to food processing and marketing within the state. And so I think there will be a lot more that we discuss over this next year as some of those other, there are some behind the scenes discussions going on, right? That I think once those are finalized, we'll be able to share a lot more information and have a much deeper discussion about how best to do some of that kind of teaching demonstration type activity.
Yeah, because I think and I think it's fair to say that the needs assessment is really critical. So having your input into what you want is very critical because we're going to use this not just for this project, but also kind of it's going to help inform where extension programs and how support should be for, you know, really to support the food system in Utah. And I'm talking about the food system from kind of the farming activities up through food processing, you know what I mean, and beyond. So that's really kind of why we're talking about this food business center, but also kind of these programs in general, because this really is, you can't do one without the other. And so it's part of multiple projects. Where will there be labeling support for food projects or for food products? Sorry.
Yes, and there's already currently in Utah, you can contact me for questions on labeling. You can also contact Rebecca Nielsen at the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food, who is the state labeling specialist, and she can provide some feedback on food labels and if they meet those requirements.
And then Kinda and Karen both, there's been a question that's come in. If you are extension personnel or working for, you know, a government agency or a nonprofit or something else in support of working with agriculturists, should you be filling out those needs assessment surveys, or what should your role be in that?
Well, I don't want to speak for Karen here. She's in charge, but no, these surveys that are out are not for us in extension. However, I see that we could probably do something like that, or simply maybe collect some input on a less formal basis. But Karen and I will talk about that and we'll get back to you.
And yeah, but really, I would really encourage everybody to take those links to those surveys and take the one that's appropriate for you for whatever you're involved in. Also, if you know of others that you feel like should also be taking those surveys, feel free to forward those on to other people. But just remember that the Ag Producer Survey is going to end March 1. So there's a short kind of timeline to get that one in. And then the Food Business Center one ends, I can't remember, the end of March, April 1. Is that right?
April 1st. Yeah.
Okay. So,
I'd love
and we
to-
will post those on the diverseag.org website next to this session, but also maybe, more on the main, part and try to send out something on that too. So
I see a comment came in on the chat. I hope Utah will be able to retain some autonomy despite its inclusion in the Southwest Regional Food Business Center with California. I would hate to see Utah Ag lose funding and support due to aversion and/or avoidance of Utah-style regulations and policies. Read diversity, equity, and inclusion, gender identity politics, immigration, ethnic quotas, and other programs. If consistency within the Southwest Regional Food Business Center is a key goal, what are the risks to Utah agriculture? I'd like to assure you that when we have these meetings with the Southwest region, it's a really great opportunity for us to advocate for Utah's needs. I know a lot of people are excited about that RFSI, the Resilient Food Systems Infrastructure Grant, but there's a lot of frustration that it doesn't include meat projects when that's such a large portion of our state's agriculture. So it allows us to advocate for some of that capacity building grant funding coming to our state and specific for our state's needs. So it gives us a seat at the table. If you look at the website for California's maps, there are a tremendous amount of organizations included in their program, and that does eat up a lot of the funding really fast. So us keeping Utah more lean allows more of the funding to go direct to businesses. And then also echoing that survey ask, we really can't advocate for program funding or for new programs without having that. So it's really imperative. There's a really cool organization in Montana where they have some of the things people have been talking about, like a shared use kitchen facility that does training and nutrition labeling. But it took them, I think, about a decade to build towards. So it might seem like one more link, but these kind of surveys help build up to bigger opportunities for food businesses over time.
And when we talk about consistency, we're really talking about consistency with the kind of assistance that our technical assistants are providing. Are they helping with business plans? Are they helping answer food safety questions? Are they helping with this topic or this topic? But the specific resources that we can use within Utah will be based on what Utah needs, not what California needs. The consistency within the capacity building is there will be one application form that everyone in these 4 states submits to apply for some of that funding. But how we work with our producers in Utah, it will be specific to Utah. As I mentioned, we can still provide grant writing workshops to help you access funding at both the state level, the specialty crop block grants, the RFSI funding that Caroline mentioned, and also at the federal level, other USDA sources of funding that are available to producers. We can provide all of those resources and workshops, even if our Utah ag producers do not ultimately end up applying for the capacity building funding, those Better Business Builder Awards. They keep changing the name. We can still provide training and input and assistance on some of those grant applications, even if ultimately your funding does not come through the regional program. That is why they have set it up so that Arizona, Nevada, Utah, and California all have equal representation on the Leadership Council. There are just as many people from Utah on the Leadership Council as there are from California, just as many people from Nevada. So when it comes to steering the direction of the Food Business Center generally, all of us, regardless of the size of our state or the priorities for ag in our state, have an equal voice as we discuss some of these issues. The consistency that they want, and I just want to reiterate this, is in how these programs are administered, how we're sharing between states, how we are assigning people to an advisory committee. They want to have some consistency with those processes. Even though the makeup of an advisory committee for Utah would look very different than the makeup of an advisory committee from California. They just want to make sure that we are following some consistent processes in creating those programs. But we have the flexibility to choose our focus. And that is where that needs assessment is so critical in getting us that information so we know what our Utah ag producers and processors need.
And then another question came in, how will food formulas be protected if they are supported through this program? Would they potentially be shared with potential competitors?
So I've been assisting food companies for about 15 years with their formulations, with nutrition facts, with food safety evaluations. And the problem is you can't get great assistance if you are hesitant to share your formula. We will need to discuss that. In the past, there have been some concerns with signing, any type of legal, yes, I'm not going to share your formulation. Because when we work with 100 different companies making salsa, we're going to tell every single one of them you need to add more vinegar or lime juice to acidify your product more. If one person decides that that was their trade secret and we shared that with everyone, so there needs to be that understanding that there are certain kinds of product development or product formulation advice that we're going to give generally because that is just best practice. That is food science. But it doesn't mean we're going to share your unique spice blend with anyone else. How we move forward within the structure of this food business program, we need to take a closer look at that and work with university legal to determine if we can sign any type of legal document, or if that's something that at that point we would need to put you in touch with a private consultant who, as a privately owned business, could provide that type of assistance with that confidentiality guarantee. So I hope that answers your question. But if you have any follow-up questions for me on that, on the labeling or the formulation, please email me directly.